All right, we're going live. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another live stream on another Thursday. Today is February 16th? 16th? Yes. And it is now the 17th of February, 0145 UTC. All right, it's already tomorrow in London. All right, and welcome to everybody. One of the biggest oversights from last week is I forgot to hold the drawing, so we will fix that this time. KE0OG says good evening from San Antone. Optical Man Jeff, KE0KRO, says he's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It is 10 degrees. It is 8 here. Cornbread asked Jeff, is it ever going to get cold at your house? Terrence, 2 Echo Zero India, Papa Kilo, Terry. Hi, Dave from Dagenham, East London. Harry Rundle says, hello, fellow Augies from AC3EK. It is a balmy 54 degrees here in Overley, Maryland. Crazy for February. Yes, that is. Chuck Shriver says, good evening, Dave, and Augies Worldwide and 5 KVO. From South Texas, currently 46, was 82 yesterday, dropping to freezing by morning. Wow. Well, it's that time of year when we can have crazy weather. Ralph Leland, hi everybody, K4TA in Fork Union, Virginia. Chris Christie, good evening from Florida. Eddie K6SDW is here. Zed Alpha Alpha 7F, hi Dave and all from Riyadh. And Saudi Arabia, hello, welcome. Dale Farney, good evening, Dave from Ohio. KG, I heard you guys are having some strange weather there. KG7POU from, it just says greetings. EC3HT says hello, Dave and Augie friends, 49 in the mountains of northeastern Pennsylvania. Colder weather on the way. From AC3HT. Mike McBride, KJ6MGV. Hi all from Chile 35 in Dayton, Nevada, which is near Reno. I've flown over it. I think I may even have landed there. I can't remember. It was such a rush there at the end. And from Saudi Arabia, he is saying that it's already tomorrow here, as it is over essentially all of Europe. And of course, everything, Australia, China, all of those places, it's like that. Mike McBride says, hi from a chilly 35, Dayton, Nevada. We just did that. James McDonough, all right, Dave, listening from England. Russell, K4QPR, evening. Read AB8AS, good evening from West Virginia. Let's see. John Ward, good evening from W3OJ in Laurel, Maryland, 54 degrees. Toby82CD says hi. And 8, where'd it go? 8 Balric says, good evening, Dave. Tango Oscar 3 Yankee Oscar Juliet or 0 Juliet D Expedition. Hello. Davis K3DHJ East Coast Doggy checking in from Newark, Delaware. Color Me OD, I'm happy to make it tonight. Appreciate your hard work, Dave. Thank you. James Gordon, hello from Poughkeepsie, New York. Yes. Jim K2JEG. Vinny Lucci, Mardi Gras season here in New Orleans. Boy, already. I hear you're having some rain or something down there. Cam McClellan, the greetings from Saskatchewan. Victor Echo 5 MCR. Leo Gustafson. Hello, Dave and all Augies from Leo, KK7CLY from Oregon. 30s and 40s, temperature-wise. Eric Sund, hi, curious about why no radial vertical multiband should start out at about 10 feet off the ground. That's because the antenna is designed to use its own counterpoise. And if you keep it up about 10 feet off the ground, the antenna kind of acts as a unit. But if you set it right down on the ground, the counterpoise will react with the ground itself and throw off the tuning of the antenna. And that's why. Let's see. Hello from Bob N4LRX in Helena, Alabama. Field KE0OG from cold and icy Kalamazoo, 27. We have about a foot of snow in our backyard. We got quite a storm yesterday. Today it was bright and sunny and cold. Some of the snow sublimated, meaning it went directly from solid to gas. It's evaporating, basically. That's not good for us here because that simply means that the atmosphere dumps the snow and then the atmosphere carries it away and we don't get the water. So, evening Dave from Southern California. Quick question. This is Richard Chandler. Can an effective 9-to-1 end-fed half-wave for single band 10 meter be done? Well, I assume it can. I think you're going to want to go with a higher ratio of an unun for that. 49-to-1 is the usual. But you can certainly try it, and you can probably tune it and make it work. Leo Gustafson, still studying for general. I hate algebraic mathematics. Well, yeah, I know. The general is one level up from technician, although I would have to say that the extra will be several levels up as you get into complex numbers and stuff like that. But hang in there. It'll come. Persist. Yes, Paul Sushariba. Evening from Xenia, Ohio, home of the Dayton Hamvention. Rainy and 59. Gerald Hancock, WH6, DLY, aloha from Honolulu. Here you guys are having fun with volcanoes over there. Warren Baker, hi Dave and all Augies from Chattanooga, Tennessee, WA4BAK. Mac Steinmeier, hello Dave from your friends in the YL system, Mac AF4PS. Ed KN4RWQ, greetings from Ocean Isle Beach, North Carolina. Sounds like you might be at risk for hurricanes from time to time. M. Monahan, KN4OGC, Mark checking in. Neil Marsh, good evening, Dave, and all from W7NRM in Southwest Washington State. Bolt Wires and Pieces, hello from Victor 31 Charlie Sierra in Belize. And welcome. Glad to have you here. Wargame Journeys N8WJD saying hello. Leo Gustafson is saying hi to Neil Marsh, another Pacific Northwester. 8 Ballrick, good evening, Dave. The 3Y0J Bouvet Island DXpedition is over, and the team is back on the boat, sailing back to Cape Town, South Africa. And that news comes from K9ETE. Yeah, that was quite it took them like 3 or 4 tries to get there. And each of those tries was quite expensive. I assume that we will hear lots about that DXpedition in upcoming issues of the QST and maybe CQ. Warren Baker says it's 66 there, but hail and possible tornadoes are forecast. I'd rather have the cold, yes. Davis says, click the like button. Yes, please. Prepam Paul, hello all from Texas. QC Duggan. Hi, Dave from Francisville, Louisiana, N5CI. Doug. Dave AC3HD, and the HF bands are filled with DX. Should be having even better conditions over the next few years as well. Yes, great time to be an amateur radio operator. Yeah, I can remember 2 sunspot cycles ago, I was working Soviet Union and Eastern Europe well into the night, 11 o'clock on 15 meters with very nice strong signals. Let's see. Evening day from uncharacteristically chilly Gilbert, Arizona. Yeah, that's in the Phoenix area. Kevin, KJ7EHQ. And Noah, KC1NWN, says, evening Dave and the group from Burlington, Vermont. Doug Taylor says, come to Alabama, 68 today, 39 tomorrow, pouring rain. Yeah, Russell, K4QPR. Dave, why would my ICOM 7300 suddenly not be recognized by Windows 10? Says USB device not recognized. The first thing you always do when you're having a problem like that is to reboot everything, and that means turn the power off to the IC 7300, because the part in there that manages the USB is on if the machine is powered, even if the button says it's off. Okay, so start there. Second, reinstall the USB driver for that, and that should probably take care of it. If it doesn't, try a different USB cable. It's, I believe, the classic AB USB cable, the one that is still used by HP printers, and so it's readily available. And you know, make sure your radio's grounded and all that good stuff like that. But if it suddenly stopped operating, that probably means something electronic. So again, to turn the IC 7300 off, you need to disconnect the power. And that will shut off the USB function in the machine. And when you turn power back on, that will reinitiate the function of the USB, even though the 7300 looks like it's off. Hope that helps. Prepham Paul, 36 in Texas. Thanks, Dave, for all your great informative videos. Thank you. Kevin Lehigh, I have discovered QRP. I've been using my Lab 599 Discovery Radio's 10-watt output to converse via SSB over much of the western half of the country. Well, congratulations. A lot of the newer QRP radios have got single sideband in them because code is not as nearly as popular as it used to be, and a lot of the QRP radios, which is defined as 5 watts or below, would be almost, you know, a lot of people don't know code, so you can't use those radios. So some of the newer radios, the G90X, Zygo 5105, and others, MFJ makes them, have single sideband available. Now, you're going to have to be patient because you have to make yourself heard. There's a lot of folklore about QRP and how best to use it. Okay. Terry in the UK, I erected an end-fed 20-meter half-wave antenna using a 49-to-1 Unknown. I not only have good SWR in 40, 20, 15, and 10, but using my internal tuner, I get the whole of 12 meters too. Very impressed. Oh, very good. Very good. If it works, use it. Russell says thank you. DJ Jackson says hello. Mike Delaney, howdy from Chile, Oklahoma, from KB5HXT. Now, one of the things we did not do a week ago, and shame on me because I had the stuff right in front of me, is to do the drawing for January. So let's get that out of the way. This is the giveaway prize, is Baofeng DM1701. It's the same as the ID on the old Starship Enterprise on Star Trek. And so it's a 1701. This is a prototype version, so it doesn't have the name on it anywhere, except if you take it apart and take the battery off, it says 1701 in there, which you probably can't see at this point. It's a little blurry, but it is a 1701. I charged it up. I updated the firmware in it, and for the life of me, I could not get the programming software to connect with it. So maybe on Windows 11 or something like that, or some different thing, we can get that to work. The programming cable does come with it, and I know it works because we were able to change the firmware, upgrade the firmware, which is a different piece of software from the programming software. You have to go not to the Baofeng site, but to Radiodity's site. All the Baofeng branded DMR radios, in fact, are sold and taken care of by Radiodity. And that is where you will find the programming software for this, is on the Radiodity website. Interestingly, RT Systems, I met the guy from RT Systems at the Albuquerque Hamfest, I think in 2019 was the last one they had. And I told him, you've got to handle the DMR radios and the other digital radios, else you're going to be swept into the dustbin. Well, they have now. They provide software that will program these radios, and that might be a better thing to do. It costs a little money, not very much. Now, Chirp still does not handle any digital radios, and they're going to have to do that too. I think have been avoiding it because that's a free. So they depend on the the kindness of people who support what they're doing there. So let's go through with this and we'll see what we can do. Let me make Travis's call available there. And Mike McBride, KJ6MGV, puts $10 into the channel funds, the chat revenue, and says, thanks, Dave, for all you do. Well, I appreciate that, because I spent the day researching the Vibroplex key. And I've got stuff about him. I've been pulling patents. Believe it or not, patents from 1903 are still around and online. I also picked up one from Canada. He has a Canadian patent. And there are 3 U.S. patents that I have found. I believe there is a 4th, but I haven't found it yet. And I want to go over these on a video I'm going to make about the Vibroplex. I bought one at Dayton. I bought the original, and I want to do a video on it talking about it because it's such a fascinating piece of technology and has quite a history. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, so let's stop talking about that and get back to these are the entries that I received. Now, I received one entry from somebody that was dated in February that said it was for the January drawing. Well, the rules are it has to reach me by the end of the month. Okay, so it needs to be mailed earlier in the month, and there's no retroactive entering. However, what I may do for that guy is take that January entry and convert it into a March entry. I think we've already announced the February prize. So let's take this. I have mixed these up really well, and so I'm going to stick a finger in here, and we'll take the bottom half off, flip it over, and this goes to K8WWS Bill Lynch. Bill Lynch is the winner. Bill, congratulations on your new DMR radio. I'll have this in the mail soon, and I say soon because of the frightful weather. I'm going to be waiting. Now, what am I going to do with the rest of these? These will be shredded, okay? I don't keep any data. And in fact, Bill will get his QSL card back in the package that I send to him with the radio in it. It'll be in there. Okay? So, very good. Congratulations to Bill on your DMR radio, which may be a first or a 10th, I don't know, but you now have a good one. By the way it's set up right now, the top channel is, I've set it up for VFO entry, so you can punch in the front the FM frequency, and it'll at least go to that for simplex. I understand from those who have reviewed it that it is it's hard to program from the front panel. So getting repeaters in and stuff like that. But simplex is good, like at Quartz Fest. I also have another radio, a Redimus radio. I've got one in the that I took down to Quartz Fest in the Jeep, and it just plugs into the cigarette lighter. You pop the antenna out on the metal hood of the Jeep, and then because the top's plastic, and that seems to work pretty good. So let's see, need some ideas on connecting two shacks with Telegraph without radios. Well, if you're going to wire connect them, the classic way to do it is using telegraphic sounders like they did in radio. If you want a tone, that's a whole different story. You can use handhelds, I guess, to send the tones back and forth, which is done. That's a different form of modulation, but it's legal to do. So I think that's what you mean. I need some ideas on connecting two shacks with Telegraph, but without radios. Well, it's usually a single pair of wires with the, well, it's the old railroad style telegraph, but it's done with sounders rather than buzzers. So it's something you're going to have to look at what's being done. Like I said, you might be better off just with a couple of 2-meter radios and do that. Travis Drake, how do you feel about the DXCC antenna at 27? Well, it's not going to work on 27 megahertz. It's not designed for it. It does have a 10-meter feature. I have used the DXCC. I think that was one of our giveaways. It's a 40 through 10 fan dipole, and the 40-meter and 20-meter are one piece of wire with a loading coil, and it's a loading coil / trap, and it only covers part of the 40-meter band, but it covers all of 20. I don't think it's going to work on 27 megahertz. Put up a dipole for it, except almost all CB work is done vertically polarized. So, and Spy Sweeper says, new ham here just took my tech and gen in January. Good job. Now working on extra. My advice for years has been this, that you get your tech and your general, and then get on the air. Get on the air. And gather a year or two of experience under your belt about to HF. And then when you get the extra with its additional operating privileges, it will mean more to you. It will be more of a personal milestone. So something to think about. But go ahead if you want to get there. But I do suggest you get your station set up now. You can go to dcasler.com/reference to look at the reference station. I have put together a complete general station from power supply to antenna and everything in between, built around the 7300. Now, it's a reference design, meaning that you can refer to it as you design your own. The power supply, I understand, starting to get a little out of date. I'm going to have to update that. But if you call DX Engineering or HRO, they can tell you about your power supply options. I recommend the IC7300 because it's a great first radio that can last you for years before you feel the need to upgrade to a mid-level or top-level radio. Now, there's the new Yaesu FT720, 740. Let's just take a look. That means their line isn't nice and smooth, where you can go from beginning to top end. There are a few radios that actually seem to compete with each other, so we'll see. Okay, let's see. Good evening from a chilly Minnesota, below zero tonight. And KG7POU says good luck all. Travis Drake is there. And let's see, Mike McBride, we're seeing his what he's put into chat revenue. Spice Sweeper says, I'm shopping to see about a good base or mobile radio that's better than an HT. I have a Yaesu FT5D, but they could never hear me. I do receive them loud and clear. I used a signal stick and a compact 10. You're going to need to get an antenna outside to do any meaningful 2-meter work at home. I would suggest a classic old J-pole will work. They make various versions of them, but you need to get something outside. You can also go to, let's try going to MFJ. Let's go back to normal view here. Okay. So that's what I would look at for you there. I used a single stick, and let's see. RT Systems is excellent. Yes, I think my transmit power is not enough. The outside antenna will make a major difference. Now, if you're looking for a mobile radio, like this one that I just got from Redimus, I don't think I've reviewed fully yet. This is from Redimus RT95. If I can get it out of here, I'll show it to you. It's a mobile radio, okay, and RT95, and this is a 2-band radio for 144 to 148 and 420 to 440. It should go up to 450, and I don't know how many watts it is. Watts. Where's its spec sheet? There should be a spec sheet in here somewhere. Specifications 29. I need 29. Okay, let's see. Transmitter power 25, 15, and 5. And that actually will do fine for a home or mobile radio. There's a lot of radios that I know the Japanese put out, like 60 watts or something like that. I think the best way to describe that is gross overkill. You don't need to do that much power up there. And they'd probably run it at 25 or 10 most of the time anyway. But I want you to remember that this antenna right here on a handheld is very suboptimum. Okay, and these come off. And this one has a little microwave connector on it. Okay, and what you do is you get the little adapter for here. It's usually goes into this cable with a little piece of coax, and the other end on it is an SO239, which you can then connect to a piece of coax to your antenna on the roof. Now, I want to mention something. This is very important. Make sure that you attach a wire from the ground side of that antenna to your station ground. And the reason for that, and I've done this, I connected a little ICOM HT to an external antenna. It was a J-pole, and I did not ground it. And the wind over the antenna created enough static that it blew out the front end on it. So don't follow in my footsteps. Make sure it is grounded there. Okay, one of those mystery objects was a Pico Balloon by some amateur radio hobbyists. If you can identify who, I would like to know that. Let's see, did I get that? Okay, we got Mike McBride, KJ6MGV, thanks for all you do. Put $10 into the chat revenue, which I really appreciate. I'm shopping to, okay, we just talked about that. Their RT Systems is excellent. I think my transmit power is not enough. Well, on a handheld, it's 5 to 10 watts. And indoors, with this antenna or any other antenna indoors, it's not going to be enough. You need to get that antenna outdoors. Okay, Colorado Radio, good evening, Dave. One of those mystery objects was a Pico Balloon by some amateur radio hobbyists. They're rather large for a Pico Balloon. And Tom, W5KUB, does Pico Balloons. He uses party balloons for those. And they, I guess they can be seen by radar. But the way they described them, they were rather much larger than that. So anyway, if you can find it, because these Pico Balloons, they don't do them in without telling people, there's a whole community out there that does Pico balloons. And if they really, that was one of the things I thought about amateurs, because those Pico balloons tend to go up around 40,000 feet, which is high enough to hit an airliner. The chances of hitting an airliner are vanishingly small, but not zero. Now, the idea of the Pico balloon is that it's small enough and massless enough that it'll go right straight through a jet engine. So now you get up in the 4 or 5 pounds of a balloon, and if that goes into a jet engine, you've got real issues. It's going to blow the jet engine, or it will cause the jet engine to blow itself apart, because the jet engines are incredibly carefully balanced. And if you break a blade in there, the jet engine is immediately unbalanced. And it's doing 30 to 40,000 RPM. And you unbalance one of those things, it will destroy itself. So that's why we don't want to do that. But yeah, if it was a Pico balloon hobbyist, let me know who. I'd like to research that a little bit and talk to the people involved. Working and playing with the Davenports, wondering your thoughts about AUXCOM and COM-T trainings. Well, it's certainly out there and available. AUXCOM, A-U-X-C-O-M. The first time I heard that, I was thinking of an ox, O-X, an old bull. Was thinking of an ox and communicating with each other. I don't know, they use their horns as the antennas. The auxiliary communications is what a lot of counties are calling this. This is done at the county level. And the ARES or RACES, or you can go directly to the organization as part of the auxiliary communications and work with them directly. We've got a guy in our club who does a lot of that with Delta County. And there is training that is required for those who participate. There are some FEMA online courses, and I don't think they're quite free. They're inexpensive, but they're not free. Will allow you to learn the standard way of operating in FEMA. What FEMA has done since 9/11 is to standardize procedures across the United States, standardize how emergency communications is organized, give responsibilities to who does what, and to tell, it's done at the county level, to tell the county people to include amateur radio operators in their plans, because the radio equipment can often interoperate with the county equipment in some ways. And there are state level emergency directors and so on. And the idea of the AUXCOM, the whole point of it is that you are prepared in the event of an emergency. You don't have to think about protocols or whatever. You got your radio gear packed. When you show up at the emergency communications center, they know you, they let you in, you hook your stuff up to a pre-positioned antenna, etc., etc., etc. And, I want to address something that this brings up here about FCC rules. Some guy left a comment for me, and it didn't make it into the commentariat, but he said, FCC regulations are not laws because only Congress can pass law. And that is not true. Congress created the FCC and gave them a mandate to regulate, to issue regulations, which have the force of law. Now, I know that's one step removed from Congress, but can you imagine, for example, this right here is the FCC Federal Aviation Regulations, which are about half of this book. So we're talking about 500 pages of regulations in here. And yes, I had to dig through this book when I was getting ready for my tests. And then the second half is the Airman's Information Manual, which is sort of a how-to do various things. And while it's not a regulation, if you violate it, you're going to have to explain to your airline why you did that. Okay? Can you imagine Congress having to maintain this? They can't. That's why they create independent federal agencies like the FAA, the FCC, the National National Transportation Safety Board. All of these people are creatures of Congress, created by Congress. Usually the way they balance the thing together is that the president appoints the board members and they do their regulations, and then they do their regulation through the court system if they have to. Normally, now understand, when Congress makes a law, does legislating, and this is true at the local level too, a law written by Congress is called a statute. A statute. Now, the courts interpret these laws and create what is called case law. The sum of case law in the country is the sum of all the precedents around statutes. You know, statutes are not always clearly written, so the case law will, through all the various cases that have involved that statute, they clarify. Oh, let's change things, stuff like that. Okay. And then there are regulations. Now, statutes and case law can result in imprisonment and fines. Regulations generally, violating a regulation generally results in a fine. Okay, they don't put you in jail. Now, if you were to violate one of these and kill somebody in the process, they would not come after you with this. They'd come after you with a murder charge based on statute. Okay. Now, it is said, for example, in this FAA book, that every regulation in here is written in blood. Because if you look at every regulation in here and research the history, you will find some accident somewhere where people died, and that's why they have the rule. Now, it's very interesting for sport pilot. One of the regulations that seems weird, seems so out of place with all the others, is that a sport pilot may not take a passenger on board who has won that seat, that flight, as a result of a raffle. And you know what happened. Some church or some organization had some sort of a fundraiser, and one of the things put up to be auctioned off was a free ride on Joe's airplane. And then Joe and Mr. Free Rider punched in and punched out. And so that's why there's that regulation there. A sport pilot is not considered trained enough to take somebody like that in the air who might freak out, grab the controls, create an issue, and kill them both. So the law statutes at both the state, local, they're usually called ordinances at the local level. Okay. The police, the sheriffs, and so on enforce the laws by catching people who commit crimes and handing them over to the judicial system. So you see all three branches of government working together. So, yes, Congress creates statutes. yes, federal agencies and state agencies create binding regulations that have the force of law, but not to the point of putting you in jail. Usually it's a fine. And it can be a stiff fine, you know, thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars for like the EPA and stuff like that. So like this big railroad disaster that they just had, somewhere in the middle of the country where they had that enormous fire and all of that sort of stuff. You know, as long as no overt statutes were broken, nobody's going to jail over this. But will there be fines? Will there be lawsuits? Oh, you bet. Oh, you bet. One of the things that the FAA does that I think is very wise is that when the NTSB, which is not part of the FAA, it's a separate federal agency, when it conducts its investigations, the various people who are involved can testify anonymously. And somebody says, well, I want to sue that son of a gun. Well, the reason that they keep them anonymous is so that they can actually derive the real facts and the real safety lessons to be learned and so on. If pilots could be sued for talking to the NTSB, no pilot's going to ever talk to the NTSB again. And so you've got a real safety issue there. So balancing this, that, and the other. Okay. Okay, so that was a way long roundabout answer to working and playing with the Davenport's question here. Elaine Karen is saying, good evening from Canada. David AC3HT says, congratulations to the winner of the drawing, as does Spy Sweeper. Colo Radio says, Dave, also check out the YouTube channel Fran Blanche for her vlog titled The Balloon, on her thoughts on how the balloon should have been brought down without destroying the payload. Well, I would imagine if they had done it over the U.S. when they first saw the balloon, or when it went over the continental U.S., if they'd shot it with a bullet, a lot of this plastic, it won't blow up. It just has a hole in it. And the hole will let the hydrogen out, or the helium, whatever they're using. And the thing will sink to the earth, and they can follow it and find it. I probably think that's a better way to do it. Also, they might want to, if there's some sort of an association of all these hobby balloonists, they ought to get in touch with that so that, like, the Air Force can check with them, or NORAD can check with them and say, do you have an operation that meets these present criteria? We can know about it. So, yeah, this is a case where apparently that Chinese balloon was enormous and went off course. The Air Force is now saying it was probably designed to go over Guam, but it got caught up by some winds. And even if it's got a little propeller on it, it's not going to overcome the jet stream. So, interesting. I'll have to do that. Thank you very much, Colo Radio. Eric Sun, congratulations to the winner. WA5ICE, what's going on? Been a long time. Well, we just announced the winner of the drawing is Bill Lynch, K8WWS, and the drawing was the Radiodity, well, it says Baofeng DM 1701. Radiodity, you get Baofeng DMR radios through Radiodity. If you get a radio through Radiodity, it's an FM only radio. Weird. Okay, so, sorry, I meant 27 feet. Oh, yeah, that's fine. You can put it up that high, tune it, and it'll work just fine. Terrence to Echo Zero IPK, any news on the plane? Yes, there is some progress. We located a guy who had sent in an order to RANS for the landing gear legs, and he has the tail dragger version, which uses slightly different landing gear legs. And so he got sent the wrong set. He wanted to return them to RANS. RANS had the request from us for landing gear legs, and so I just bought them from him, had them shipped direct to the FBO. So we're still missing the yoke for the front wheel and something having to do with the rim or something. When we get those things, start putting the thing back together. Insurance is paying for it all. And as soon as they do, I'm going to fly it a little bit. And then we're going to put it up for sale. It's just too expensive. Even though this latest experience didn't cost me anything. It's costing me about $300 a month for the hangar and the electricity. And then $5,000 a year for the insurance, which is incredible. And, you know, plus and that just gets me the plane. If I want to go fly it, I got to put gasoline in it. There's a new unleaded gasoline becoming available for light aircraft that's not leaded, but it is not widely available yet. So that's the plane and where we're going with the plane. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I mean, it was like October, November, somewhere in there where I broke it. I landed too hard and broke off the nose wheel. So, and I can blame absolutely no one but myself. I was having some trouble with the headset. It just was not working properly. And I was very leery of landing with the headset that wasn't working properly. What I should have done was take it off, set it in the seat next to me, and land. But I didn't. Now I know. If I had a window, I should throw it out the window and land. And as it was, I'd set myself up wrong for the landing and broke the front wheel off. Okay, yeah, 27 feet for the DXCC. That's higher than I had it. I had it at 20 feet. Okay, Pete Dayton's channel. Can you comment on flagpole antennas? There was a period of time when the company that makes most of them was sort of iffy. But they seem to have come back in good order with some very good antennas. And the idea being is it's a flagpole. It's a real flagpole. And you put it out. You put the radials out and so on. And whatever you need to do to put a tuner at the base. And you get the wire back into your shack all buried and landscape lovely stuff around it. And they do work. They do work. The taller, the better. And make sure you check with them, you know, how long it's going to be before they're going to ship it and stuff like that. And what kind of help you might need to put it up. You will need to pour concrete for the base. So make sure that you're all set up to do that. You can pay somebody to do that. You can hire or use your own cement mixer or whatever. But there's a lot of physical labor involved right there. If I had to have a hole dug with a pole in it filled with concrete for me, I'd hire it out at my age. I can't do that sort of stuff anymore. Hope that helps answer your questions. Let's go up here. normal view. And let's see, Des Moines, Iowa, Justin Jacobs says it's 14 degrees right now. We're down to 5. MT Free, do you have a reference antenna for apartment dwellers? I did a video on that pretty recently. In fact, in the latest QST, the March QST, there's an article in there. Steve Goodgame is writing articles about highlighting YouTubers. And he picked me this in March. And there's a picture in there that comes from an apartment dweller who has questions about antennas. You have many options. Anything from a mag loop to a buddy pole to an end-fed half-wave looping over to a tree to MFJ's balcony antenna where you use a hamstick and clamps to your balcony and then you run the counterpoise into the house somewhere. There are lots of options that you can try. Now note, the best option would be some way to get with the building manager and put an antenna on the roof of your apartment. When I was in the Air Force, I did that in the bachelor officers' quarters, and the antenna sat on the flat roof. This was Florida. And I used big bricks, concrete blocks, to hold the radials in place. And a piece of plywood with something on it to put the base. And I laid out the radials on the roof and used a piece of plywood underneath the antenna so it wouldn't make a hole in the roof there. That would have been nasty. And it worked well. So, let's see. Okay, flagpole 14, a reference antenna for apartment dwellers. I mean, you can try just stringing up a dipole in there, but a lot of those apartments have got concrete in them, and that makes it an issue. You need to get something on the balcony or out, just pushed slightly away from the balcony. Okay, Warren Baker, Travis Drake, if you can get it higher would be better. Manual suggests 35-foot center height, designed as an inverted V. Yes, I can't get anything 35 feet high. I don't have any tall objects here. Okay, Justin Jacobs says, for newly licensed ham, what would you recommend for setup ham shack? I'm a tech at the moment, but plan on getting my general. Well, once you get your general, go to dcasler.com/reference. And in there, it lists all the pieces of a reference design for a station. Now, by reference, I mean you refer to it. If you prefer a different antenna than the one I suggest in there, do it. And if you prefer a different rig, do it. Now, I will say this. Whenever I do a video about HF that involves the radio, I use the ICOM 7310 because I set up my station to match the reference station, which meant I had to take my really nice Yaesu FTDX 3000 out of service. It's up on the shelf up there, and use the ICOM 7300, which is a really nice radio. I like it a lot. Okay. Okay, did I miss something? The thing suddenly went way down. Adam Gahate says, passed all 3 exams on Saturday. Thanks for all the years of content available for study material. AJ6Z Victor. Very good. Welcome to Ham Radio. Again, go to look at that, dcasler.com/reference, and let's get you on the air. And thank you for your $20 put into the chat revenue. Okay. And Mike McBride, let's see. Mike McBride added $10 to the chat revenue and says, thanks, Dave, for all you do. And let's see, I keep hitting two buttons at once on this thing here. Okay, see if I can figure out where I was. Okay, no audio. I show audio here. I show audio. Unfortunately, 27 feet, I think, is my limit. I'll have to see if I can get something stronger for the extra height. Go ahead and put it up with what you've got. Like I said, I did it with 20 feet and it worked fine. You know, the lower it is, the more your signals are going to go up rather than out. But, you know, with time you can fix that. There's still plenty of people to work. Okay, why does my radio receive better when I attach a good length of wire to its chassis ground? Okay, you make me suspect that you don't have a station ground. And if you had a ground, meaning a ground rod into the ground, right outside the window where you've got your ham shack, you run a nice thick wire like number 6 stranded copper down to it, and you've got a single point ground in your shack, a piece of pipe about this, copper pipe about this long, that you attach all your station grounds to, you probably would not notice much difference. However, what that piece of long wire that you've attached to the ground on your radio does for you is it creates a counterpoise. Now, counterpoise, often described as something for an antenna to work against, is actually capacitive in nature because you send electricity out and it sends it right back. That's what a capacitor does. And depending on how you route the counterpoise and so on, can have a major difference on the performance. Note that when you are transmitting, it is also acting as a counterpoise, and it is live. So it should be made of an insulated piece of wire with something tape over the ending so a kid or a dog or so on doesn't grab that thing, because they can be in for the shock of their life if they do so. The end of it's a high voltage, RF voltage. So yes, that helps. And if you're an apartment dweller, that's something that you can do that can really help. But it's called a counterpoise, and you probably won't need it if you have grounding, you've got lightning arresters, you've got all your cables coming through the lightning arresters and so on. Then the outside shield of the cable can count as the counterpoise, and it'll be grounded, and so you don't get that RF coming into your shack. But anyway, I think that's what's going on there. Okay, Mike McBride, KJ6MGV, in regards to the reference station, have you ever priced it out in today's costs? Would you estimate in the neighborhood of $3,500 to $4,000? I would estimate more in the neighborhood of $2,000. Maybe less, because the power supply is about $150. That's the other pricey piece of it. The antenna is less than $100. The coax is about $100. The lightning arresters are less than $100. The ground rod is way less than $100. You can get them down at Home Depot. And so on. So, but yeah, you could probably be pushing a couple grand, especially if you got a different antenna. I don't think you'd get up to $3,500 to $4,000. No audio when you switch to screen. Microphone. Okay, there is the microphone for the screen. How about? Sorry about that. my mistake. I need my assistant to set all this up for me. He will be here tomorrow, which is good. He's young, he's got a strong back, and hopefully he'll shovel the walk, which has over a foot of snow on it. So, okay. Dave, you're losing audio whenever you show the computer screen. I apologize for that. Okay. AJ4UO, hi from Tennessee. Mike McBride, did everything go off camera to a website, we lose the audio. I apologize. That's a problem setting up. Does that work? Yeah, that works there. Okay. By the way, on this one, I thought that I was inventing a word, commentariat, which was comments on the comments. And I've already, I put one up yesterday and received quite a few comments on the comments on the comments. But the commentariat is considered the members of the news media considered as a class. And the word was apparently first used in 1990 or something. So it's not that old a word. I thought it was a made-up word. Okay, so there, I apologize for that. Adam Gahate, yeah, passed all 3 exams. And congratulations, let's get you on the air. Spy Sweeper was thinking of just putting up the compact antenna with the ground plate outside at the chimney. I mean, that could work. You're going to need coax, okay? So it's going to need coax connectors and stuff like that. Coax is over $1 a foot, so, you know, determine what all the pieces cost. You can get them from DX Engineering or Ham Radio Outlet, or there are a bunch of other stores that are smaller but may offer you very good customer service. Okay. Great info, Dave. I also just got my Tech General. Your videos have helped, and I am working on getting comfortable behind the mic. Any tips? Yes. Call up a friend who's a general and set up a schedule so that you can get on the air with somebody you know. Okay? And do that 3 or 4 times. And then you'll find yourself loosening up with the mic. The way to get over mic fright is to use the mic. So you just got to do it. And I would suggest starting when, with a friend, or 2, or 3, or 4, okay, to get over the mic fright. And then after a while, it'll be gone. And you can be like me. You can look into a black hole right there and talk and mentally see 142 people out there all listening. And welcome again to all of you. At Rickreal Hamfest, I'm hoping to find a tri-band or an upper end antenna for the little Yaesu VX6 I have. Any recommendations? Look for diamond or arrow antennas or an MFJ. Diamond and arrow have good names. I've got one of their antennas set up right now. It's a 440 antenna, and I've got another one down there for 144 that's a beam, a 4-element beam. And there are antennas that will do both bands, Yagis. Now, you don't want the Yagi if you've got repeaters in a bunch of different directions, okay? Because then you have to have something to turn the beam all the time. You don't want to do that, so just an ordinary antenna will probably do very well. I can hoist it at least about 20 feet high. It's probably good enough. For mobile operations, okay. Mobile, where do I have it? It's out in the Jeep. It's a little mag mount that's got coax on it with a PL259, so you'll need an adapter. It does 2 meter and 70 centimeter, and it's a mag mount going in the top of the car from MFJ. Cost approximately $25 or $30. So really cheap and effective. It's full-size quarter wavelength. It uses the car's roof as its counterpoise. Obviously, if you have a plastic roof, that won't work. My Jeep has a plastic roof, so I put it out on the hood. Okay, yeah, sorry about the audio. Balloons we fly for AM radio, yes. Okay, greetings from Southeast Missouri, David Fuller. MT free. Can I use a magnetic loop antenna indoors for HF? You can, but you're filling your room with HF. A lot of antennas, mag loop antennas, have to be adjusted right at the antenna. And they're designed for portable use, where you're outside at a picnic table. Now, some antennas, like the MFJ and the new Chameleon F-loop, has got a remote tuner. There's a really cool little tuner indicator from the guy in Brazil that makes them, and I can never remember his call sign, PY something, I don't know. Anyway, I've got one of those. It's really cool. I have several mag loops. I have the MFJ mag loop can be remotely controlled from the shack. And now that new Chameleon can be also. But a lot of them you have to turn the dial right at the bottom of the tuner. And so that means you got to have the mag loop setting next to you while you're operating your radio. And a lot of those mag loops are limited to like 20 watts. Okay, because they're using standard capacitors rather than the great big high voltage capacitors. So there's a lot to mag loops, and if Kai from the ARRL were here, he'd say definitively they're not magnetic, they are small HF loops. And I go, yes. However, everybody calls them mag loops. So there you go. Okay, I think I should have audio now. Yeah, Erickson, yes. Adam Tucker, hello from Alabama, K4TOC. Invader 137, I had a jet engine come apart on me when I was testing it on the stand. Oh my goodness, I hope you were not standing beside it, but were in front of it or behind it, because everything would go straight out from the sides. Ox, grown-up steer, okay. Yeah, they never got around to taking it for meat. Oxen were farm animals for a very long time. David Fuller, live in a ground floor apartment and looking recommendations for radio to include HF and antenna for indoors. Well, we've been talking about those MFJs. They do work. You can, and I've got a video on antennas for balcony users and stuff like that. You can look for that. Go to my, well, let's see. I can search on my YouTube site, but I'm not sure if you go there that you can search just on my YouTube site. But you'd search for balcony or balcony antenna. Okay. Smoberdine says, hello from Ohio. Thank you for all that you do for the ham hobby. I'm happy to announce that I acquired the Amateur Extra license last weekend, and I'm also an accredited VE. K8STU, congratulations to you, especially on the part about becoming a VE. David asks, is there a way to ground an antenna feed line without climbing up on the roof? Well, yeah, the feed line comes down to your shack. If instead of bringing it into the shack initially, you take it down to the ground rod and just ground the outer shield to the ground rod and then bring it into your shack, that's step one. Step two is where it's grounded to the ground rod. Uncouple that, put a lightning arrestor in there. In between, I've got a handy lightning arrestor right here. This is one by Alpha Delta, and it's the TT3G50, and there's two versions of them. Inside of this thing, you find a metal tube. This one has red writing on it, which means it's the low power one. It'll handle up to about 300 watts going through the system. Now, the way you get these back in, a lot of them can come already sort of attached. And in fact, I got that upside down. And you can screw them in this way. These are replaceable if and the failure mode is supposed to be shorted so that you can tell if your SWR goes wild. You need to replace the little thing here because it protected your equipment. So, question, what is the rule of thumb for the height to make an inverted V dipole? Get it up high enough that you can bring the ends out at 90-degree angle minimum, best about 135. Also, you want the ends about 8 or 9 feet above the ground and attached to something so that people don't guillotine themselves as they walk through it. When I do this, I usually attach the ends to a tree up about 7 feet because that's where the tree's not going to move very much in the wind, okay? And then that holds the inverted V up off the ground. And it's basically a dipole that's shaped differently. You may have to change the lengths of it just a titch. Okay. Let's see. Congratulations, Smoberdine. Well done. From Leo. Tommy Helton, KQ4AHR. Good evening, Dave and everyone from Alabama. And Leo also adds his congratulations. Neil Marsh, Congress delegated rulemaking authority to the FCC. FCC regs thus carry the force of law. End of story. Yes, but it's sometimes fun to look at the whole system. Michael Cade, KI5SPA, good evening to all. Charlie Gehring, late again, but howdy. Good to see you. Tom ND9Z says, greetings, Dave, from snowy to Chicago. Yeah. It was really snowy here yesterday. We got a foot of snow. Maybe slightly more. And it is 4 degrees outside right now. We have clear skies. And whenever we have clear skies at night, it gets cold because there's no clouds to keep the heat in. Okay. Let's see. We've got some more. Let's see, snowy Chicago. There's quite. We're starting to run out of time, and I got to answer some other questions. Can't get the 8-foot grounding rod any more than about 4 to 5 feet on ground because of rocks it set. Is this okay or pointless? Get true ground rods. Dig a trench with one end being where you'd put the ground rod in. Dig a trench that's 8 feet long, 6 inches, a foot deep. Deeper the better. Lay your ground rod horizontally. Now, on the other side, do the same thing with a second ground rod. Connect them in the middle. That's your ground. And that will work as well as a single ground rod going straight down into the ground. Ground rods are not expensive. They're actually copper-coated steel, so they're not pure copper. They're not going to set you back a log. Pure copper is nowhere near strong enough to be driven into the ground. But you can do sideways, and the grounding will work. Okay, let's see. Okay, so that was Eric. I heard that it was confirmed that one of the balloons shot down was a Ham's balloon. I would like more information on that, namely the call sign of the Ham. Did you see the RTL SDR blog post about the amateur balloon? I have not. Henderson, good evening from AC8AGF. The British researched that 2,000 holes and the balloon didn't notice. 80,000 feet also limits what can fly that height and still shoot. We have shown with a special one-off weapon that an F-15 going as high as it can, as fast as it can in a level flight, which means supersonic, and then going up and launching itself up. Now, there's not enough air to sustain combustion up there. And then when it gets to near the top of its trajectory, it launches the weapon, and it can actually hit a low Earth orbit satellite and bring it down. Now, we did that on a satellite that was ready to deorbit. And the reason we did that is because we wanted the debris to come down and burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. The Chinese did a similar demonstration, but went up and got a satellite at 200 miles. The problem with that is the debris is still there. And anything can run into it. So, yeah, it depends on the balloon. Yeah. If it's a party balloon, all it's going to take is one hole. Kevin K3 KTB. Dave, can you lay radials over top of other radials? Yeah. You're normally from the center out, you know, and if you want to add a few more, they happen to overlap a bit, don't worry about it. Okay. Sorry to hear about the plane. Aviate, navigate, and communicate. Yes, in that order, which I failed to do and paid the price. Optical. Can you explain with a mag loop antenna what happens to the electrical component? In brief, in very brief, if you create a changing magnetic field, not a static one, but a changing magnetic field, RF changing, it will radiate a magnetic field into the electromagnetic field. There's no such thing as just a magnetic field or just an electric field. I mean, you can talk about them, but they're really one field. And so the changing magnetic field creates a changing electric field, which in turn creates a changing magnetic field. And this is how your signals propagate away from the antenna. So you can excite either the magnetic field or the electric field. Electric field antennas are things like dipoles, Yankees, things like that. Those are electric field antennas. There is now the magnetic loops, in theory, some people say, excite the magnetic field. But Kai is of the opinion that although there is some magnetic field excitation, it's still mostly electrical. So that would make it a small HF loop instead of a true magnetic loop. But it's interesting how you feed these things. You feed them entirely differently from the way you feed large loops. You've got a small loop about that big, and it looks like a dead short, and at DC it is. But when you put RF into that, that RF couples, I suspect inductively, into the larger loop. Now, to tune that larger loop, you have to have a capacitor in there because there's inductance in that thing. And so you need to have the right amount of capacity added to that to make that thing resonate. Now, one of the problems with a magnetic loop antenna is that the inherent radiation resistance is about 1 ohm. And the way the thing is built, it's a tank circuit, and so the circulating currents are extremely high. If you were to touch the top of the magnetic loop near where the capacitor is, you'd have a pretty nasty little shock. Now, so you've got very high circulating currents, which is why the magnetic loops like the MFJ, which are designed to handle 100 watts, are made of a piece of aluminum pipe that's about that big around, so it's got a very large surface area to reduce the ohmic resistance as much as possible. And then when you couple to it, you've got about as much ohmic resistance as you do radiation resistance, less than 1 ohm, and then you can radiate. My experiments have shown that the mag loop radiates about as well as a dipole. Okay, now it is more directional than a dipole. And unlike a large loop radiates in the direction of an arrow through the loop. The magnetic loop, if you got this is the plane of the loop, it radiates off the ends. So there's something fundamentally different going on there. We're almost out of time. Let's see, Optical Man Jeff, KE0OG, has added $15 to the chat revenue, which is very, very much appreciated. He says, thanks, Dave, for all your efforts helping all of us hams with the best info available. Well, thank you. Okay, and Felipe Lewis adds $100 to the chat revenue. Thank you. Was wondering your thoughts on the possible Chinese balloon. I think it is pretty well established that it was launched from Hainan Island, right off the coast of China, and was sent out. Now, the winds tend to come from the west around the world. They rotate in that direction. But it was caught in a very strong wind and headed north, much more north than they intended it to. Let's see, do you think they could obstruct communications and above horizon radars? No, I don't think so. Even if it had a 100-watt transmitter on it, it would still not be enough to overcome an over-the-horizon radar. Now, could it jam, say, an air traffic control radar? Well, the air traffic control radar would see a spike in the direction of the balloon, so they could track it down pretty easily, but those radar antennas are extremely directional. So you'd only get that jam just in that one direction. If war ever broke out, satellites would be targeted and the debris would be catastrophic. It depends on the altitude. Now, the nation's reconnaissance satellites fly very low because they want a good field of view. There are a lot of satellites up there to knock out. Communication satellites tend to be at GEO, which is very difficult. That's 23,000 miles away. You'd have to launch some sort of a rocket with a payload that could go out there, seek it, and destroy it. And there's a lot of satellites in GEO. So the possible Chinese balloon, I think, was definitely a Chinese balloon. Do you think they could obstruct communications and above horizon radars? I think they were far more interested in receiving rather than transmitting. Would our satellites be targeted? Yes, they would. Would that completely blind us? I don't think so. We have high-altitude aircraft that can do things, and with side-looking radar and so on. The debris would be a mess. If they get the, I can't tell you some of this. So, okay, but balloons could work. Yes, they could. I think that's a good idea. Okay, let's see. I think that concludes it. We are over time. Chat revenue was $150, and I really appreciate that. Like I said, I've got to save up and get one of those Yaesu radios. Maybe I can talk to them and get it at a discount for that. So, Far West Missouri, snow there, 27 degrees. It's down to 3 right now, Fahrenheit, which means it's above zero, but it's way negative centigrade. So, there we go. There's our little chat. I just love you guys. I love this evening activity on Thursday. It's nice to touch bases with you, get a feel for what you're interested in and so on. And I'll get this out to Bill Lynch, this prize for January. And we're already accumulating entries. The way to enter is a postcard, a QSL card, or a piece of paper in an envelope. Somebody put a stamp on their QSL card and then put it in a stamped envelope. I think they were going to mail it and then change their minds. It doesn't matter what you send, the way I mix them. It does it kind of independent of the size. But if you send to me, Dave Casler, KE0OG, P.O. Box 98, Ridgeway, Colorado, 81432. And on the piece of paper, card, whatever, your name and call sign, and the address you would like the prize shipped to if you win, and your phone number in case I have any questions. The winning card goes back to the winner. All of the other entries are shredded. Okay, so I don't keep any information. That's to preserve your privacy. And it's all written. There's no electronic in here, and so that preserves your privacy. So until we next meet, 73.